So my name is Lori Caldwell. I am the compost gal, and I want to welcome you to on my talk today on succulent gardening. Please feel free to interject with questions. I really don't stand on any formality. I've been happily teaching sustainable gardening classes all over the Bay Area since 2007. So if you've been to a local library or a local nursery or see me on Zoom, chances are we most likely have crossed paths. So please, any questions? A good question. Let's see if I know how to work this thing. What we're going to be talking about today, our general agenda. We're going to talk about the intro and the benefits. How many people are currently growing succulents right now? Oh, all of y'all. Well, of course. Wait a minute. Wait, do we have anybody who's not? Maybe that's a better question. Do we have any newbies? Don't be shy. Okay, right on. Okay, newbies are always good. We're going to talk about the benefits and how to, so we're definitely going to be talking about that. Growing them in containers, and I also like to talk about, of course, growing them in ground if you have the ground to do that. Mulching and propagation, we're going to talk about succulents being kind of a fun gift as well, especially as we approach kind of the holiday season. I always think succulents are usually fun, interesting things to kind of give away, and you could do it in bulk. The benefits. There are so many different varieties. If you just walk through the section or you're just walking through anybody's garden, you can see there's so many different varieties even with the same family. They look a little bit different. The flowers are kind of weird and interesting. They range in very, very, very tiny leaflets to gigantic things like big aloes or big agaves, century plants, etc., etc. They're great for indoor and outdoor gardens. They're pretty difficult to kill, but I have been known to kill one from time and again. But I am in the camp where you're not really a gardener until you've actually killed anything. You have to kill something. It's all kind of part of the process. If everything is, 100% all the time, what fun is that? It's where from the mistakes is where you learn from, and then you grow as a gardener for sure. They are drought tolerant, which really suits us and suits our climate. Definitely easy to propagate. Some of them are definitely easier than others to propagate, of course. Don't require too many inputs, which is great. And then a lot of them are, have a lot of terminal spines on the edges. So if you're looking to keep teenagers from escaping at night or from people coming into your house, they make great deterrents. They're especially those agaves. Those terminal spines are very, very sharp. And then lastly, it's a great kind of gateway plant. So if you've never gardened ever, succulents are a good kind of way in because they are very easy to maintain and take care of. And then you kind of, you really build confidence. Welcome. Build confidence from that. And then, next thing you know, you're growing fruit trees, you're growing tomatoes, and you're getting chickens and goats, and you're buying, a couple acres out in the middle. And it all started with one little succulent class here at Annie's. The beginning of your journey, your homestead journey. Actually, that's the beginning of my homestead journey. All right. Any questions before we get started into the meat of it? Okay, great. So let's just talk about how we're going to take care of them before we get to the how do we propagate them, etc., etc. So watering. So I always usually allow my succulents to dry out a little bit before I water. But then, of course, there's different kind of caveats to that. Are they in full sun? Are they in pots that, increase a lot of drainage? They're terracotta, where maybe I'm going to have to water a little more often. I talked briefly before we started about the concept of full sun. Full sun's great, but full sun in your yard may be different than full sun in my yard. Maybe your yard's a lot more broader, so the heat gets a little bit more dissipated out throughout. Maybe you don't have fences or concrete or any kind of hardscape in your yard that's going to increase the temperature of your thing. So always when I'm thinking about gardening, I always want everyone to kind of think about not necessarily always the climate, the general climate of our region, but always think about whatever the microclimate is in your garden specifically, because that really does matter. That's a really big factor when it comes to growing anything, succulents, fruit trees, all that. So allow the soil to almost dry before you water. And again, they vary. The whole idea is to kind of keep them looking plump and juicy. So sometimes, depending on the plant, a little bit more often than you suspect. But then again, that means you have to kind of make a choice. If it's constantly drying out, maybe you need to different pot. Maybe you need another place to live where it's not going to continually dry out all the time. You're going to give it enough water until it passes out the drain hole, so you know that all that water has percolated through for sure. And then in the winter, I water about maybe once a month, especially for outdoor gardens. However, if we end up with any of the rains we have, then I usually don't have to worry about that. It's usually the opposite. I always have to worry that my plants are getting too much water at that time. So usually in the winter, I grow everything in containers. So all my containers get put up on bricks or blocks to increase the drainage. So there's no like suction hole between that and concrete or grass or even mud. It's going to plug that and drown your plant from too much water. So I'm always going to want to try to water once a month if there's no rain. If not, again, we're really trying to keep them looking something juicy. Questions about water? All right. Yes.
So when you let it drain through the hole,
usually, and usually with any cat, I'm sorry. The question was, sometimes you'll have a plant and you'll just water it, and even if you just continually to water it, it just comes running through, and not even really stopping. So that means it's mostly root and not much soil. So it may come the time to actually transplant it. So you're going to want to pull that out. And I have a plant just like that. I keep watering it. It's a succulent, and it still doesn't seem to really kind of rebound back. So I'm assuming that it's time to take it out, break it apart, and then just break it up into pieces and propagate it. So usually it might need a bigger pot and some soil. Depending on the plant, sometimes you can just do kind of a good little root cut some of the roots, and then repot it with some fresh soil. Yes.
so you put it on the ground and you get hydrophobic soil.
I would probably with hydrophobic soils, like a soil that you purchase, or just your soil just in. Sure. That's good. Sure. So that's clay soil, what you're talking about mostly. My ability to increase my drainage on it, I'm going to want to add some more organic material to my clay soil. So compost. I'm going to say compost. Compost is going to be kind of the best bet for you when it comes to that, because it's going to not only provide a little bit of organic material, some nutrition, even though succulents really don't need a lot of that, but it's going to help open up that clay soil to allow for some additional drainage. If you work in the opposite, I live in Martinez, we have a lot of sandy soil. So compost is going to help clump those particles together so it holds on to water a lot longer. So yeah, compost is going to be a great key for increasing drainage, which is what you want. Yes?
What are the visual indicators of an overwatered succulent?
The visual indicators of an overwatered succulent, usually it's going to be a lot of yellowing leaves, a lot of die off. It's going to be kind of very fleshy. It's going to be very kind of, even the main stem might be a little squishy, especially down towards the base. So yeah. And don't be afraid if there's a plant and you put it in the ground and it hasn't been there long enough, but you know that it's just not working for you there. Feel free to go ahead and pull that out and start over. Even if the plant has been there for several years, please feel free to, find it a new home, especially while it's still kind of alive and thriving. But yeah, don't be afraid to start over. With some plants, don't be afraid. I'll talk about that when we talk some things about succulents as well. Yes?
Is there anything you can do once it gets a little mushy? Is there anything you can really do if it's root rotting?
Yes. Not too much. You can always, once it gets, especially if the mush, can you do anything once the plant kind of gets really kind of root rot? If it's fleshy, really smushy in the stems, I'm afraid that might be a point of no return. If it's just kind of icky in the leaves, sometimes just a removal of the leaves and just do maybe a hard cut of the main stem and then just see if it might come back. That's a nice thing. Succulents can be very forgiving, which is nice. Any other questions? These are great questions. Please keep them coming. Drainage. Some people like to increase the drainage of their potting soil by adding things like lava rock or sharp sand or pumice. Again, potting soil usually has enough for me. When it comes to that, usually there's either perlite or vermiculite to increase the drainage. Yes?
What is sharp sand?
It's like it's like literal sand, but it's very, very, very tiny, unfortunately. It's very, very tiny. So you're going to be mixing it in with your potting soil. So I'm not really sure how well it does as far as, because sometimes, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, sometimes mixing sand with another kind of soil makes it kind of concrete-ish, which what you're trying to avoid. So I think but you're definitely trying to avoid that. So I think the sharp sand, because it's much smaller particles, you're able to increase the drainage without, kind of binding up with the regular soil. You could also buy, soil, cactus or succulent soils and stuff like that. Sometimes that's always fun. But again, I've always had really, really good success with just good old garden variety potting soil that I just use for pretty much everything, starting seeds, planting plants, fruit trees, the whole thing. Any questions before we move on to the next one? All right. Nutrition. It doesn't require that much nutrition. Actually, I can't remember the last time I did anything with any of my succulents as far as nutrition. Occasionally, they'll get like a cold cup of coffee or something like that. No sugar or milk or anything in it. Coffee has a little bit of nitrogen in it. And of course, it's water, a little bit of acid. Sometimes I'll water with that. Sometimes if it's something maybe a little bit bigger, I might do maybe like a fish emulsion or maybe some diluted worm castings. But for the most part, I mostly just water them and then propagate the heck out of them until, I just tore down like a huge, huge plant into a bunch of little cuttings that I'm going to end up propagating. So that's always fun. Liquid versions, I always prefer, just because usually a lot of our succulents are very tight knit together. So it's going to be difficult to try to do any kind of granular operations usually around the base or near the base of it. So liquid always really well. And you're going to be watering anyway, so why not?
Is Miracle Grow a good thing, or is that right?
How much time do you have? I'm just kidding. Okay, so no, sorry. Short answer is no. It's not really good. The example I always like to use is, it does exactly what it says on the label. The guarantee quick, lush growth, fast growth. And that's fine. I don't know if you're like trying to flip a house and you need like that, that kind of instant grow or anything. But in reality, imagine going to the age you are right now, from birth to the age you are right now, in 2 weeks' time. Imagine what that stress would be on your body. That's the effect of Miracle Grow on the average plant. So yeah, so they're trying to do that. Plus that quick, lush growth, because it's kind of weakened. Now every pest within, several hundred yards of you is now going, oh, well, you look pretty good. You're weak. There's no way you can fight back. Let's go after you. So for other reasons, aside from just those 2 reasons alone, should be enough not to do it. The rest, just definitely avoid it. Yes.
Is that what happens to plants from home improvement centers when they come home looking all lush and then they just...
Yes. Sometimes with plants that come home from home improvement centers, because they're just like, you know what I mean? They want to come and, and show off, but as you can see, that is very easily done without the inputs of any kind of major chemical inputs. So yes, so definitely. So no Miracle Grow. Yes.
I have a question. At one point I was told to, especially with containers, I use filtered water for my succulents.
Oh, using filtered water for your succulents instead of, I think it's that kind of whole chlorine. Some people do like to do that. Some people like to use rainwater. Rainwater is always really, when we get it, collecting it. I know that you can just, take a basin of it and leave it out for at least a couple of days to help to kind of evaporate some of that. But again, my plants are always super happy when it's rainwater. But I think they're also just as happy when it's also tapped. But you also have the option, of course, to put a filter on your hose bib or on your irrigation in order to kind of reduce that as well. So you don't have to sit, buckets of water just kind of lying around in your backyard, waiting for the exactly. But BT dunks for that, so that's easy. All right, sunshade. Most required full sun, of course, but well, of course, we talked about that being an exception. The full sun in my place is different than maybe a full sun in your place. So kind of test your plants out before you commit to it. Indoor plants, they also have sometimes problems because as the sun goes through your window, it definitely intensifies. So please keep that in mind. Usually, if it says full sun, like full kind of morning-ish sun, not full like 3 o'clock in the afternoon sun, because that's just going to be double on that, and you could definitely burn your friends. Definitely don't want that. Most of them need about 6 hours, but again, I can put like asterisks after all of this because it really all depends on what's going on inside your house if you're doing indoors, what's going outside your house if you're doing outdoor stuff. So the nice thing about gardening is it kind of brings play into everything. A lot of experimentation. Does this work? Does this not work? Can I make more plants out of this? Yes. All right. One of the great benefits of succulents, of course, is the idea of growing in them in containers. Fortunately, you can grow things in succulents in containers that you couldn't grow anything else in. So you got old rubber tires or cinder blocks or treated pallets and things that usually have a fair amount of toxic chemicals in them, even though you may not want to bring those into your garden. That's entirely up to you. But if you do have them, you're more than welcome to use them because, again, we are not eating these succulents. So there's no any kind of risk of any kind of contamination for that. My former boss, her son was going through like a huge growth spurt. He would just go through shoes. Like every couple of weeks, he would go through shoes. Not outgrow them, but he would rub the soles and make holes in the soles. I'm not sure exactly what he was doing. So they were. She couldn't even recycle, pass those along or anything. But she took clips and she filled them with soil and she put succulents in them. Automatic drain hole. Anything that has automatic drain hole is always my friend. And then just hung them using hooks on her fence line and planted that. So old boots, tin cans. This right here is a beverage tub keep. Like if you've ever been to like a catering event. I used to work for a catering company in my past life. And there was no lid and a broken spout. Automatic drain hole. So I have 2 of them. One of them is growing basil right now. And the other one is growing lovely succulents in it, which is nice. Again, the reuse options are endless. It's just really about providing enough drainage so that they don't get too much water. So again, this guy's, and I can see a million things, my backpack, that Republic thing, that toter, this coffee cup, this. You can do all kinds of different things with that.
Okay, those don't have drainage. So because
right,
you put a lot of rocks in at the bottom. What do you do?
No, I'm gonna get out my drill and I'm gonna make a drain hole out of it. Chances are I might not even take the cap off of here because it's gonna be weird. I might do drainage holes here on the bottom and make sure it's on a saucer or suspend it from my fence, and then drill bigger holes in here, fill it with soil, and then do succulents in that.
Okay.
I would do that. I do them in, usually metal's a little bit more difficult because it does have a tendency to get hot, but in the shade it looks lovely. You know what I mean? So I've done them in coffee cans, and you can see that, there's another better picture. There's a metal pitcher that my aunt gave me. She drilled holes to the bottom of it, and I've got succulents growing out of that as well. So yeah, anything. I mean, literally anything. A gentleman's baseball cap right there, that bucket hat, a fanny pack. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Driftwood? Yes, I think driftwood would be lovely. You most likely would have to drill holes, put a little bit of soil in there, just so, they have some sort of moisture and stuff to hold on to. Yeah, that would be great for that. Yeah, driftwood would be awesome. That's also great for air plants, too, if anybody's into air plants. Yes?
So the amount of soil that does that vary usually, or are there any succulents that need like a lot of soil?
They really don't need a lot of soil. When you first got here, we were having a conversation about how I got into succulents, and I was teaching a class, and a lot of the participants came and they brought a bunch of succulents, and I took them home with me so I could use them for other workshops. And they were just stacked in this 5-gallon bucket, just out of the way. I put it in a corner and completely forgot about it until about a month and a half later. I go back, and meanwhile, there's just cuttings. They've rooted and they flowered. So it really doesn't matter. Soil is mostly just a situation where it's going to provide a little bit of nutrition, and it's for that water holding capabilities in order for it to kind of stay plump and juicy. But again, I'm not going to plant an agave with like one cup of soil. You know what I mean? Maybe a sedum, but something depending on how much soil it is, how big the your final succulent's going to be. Yeah.
I have a spiral agave and it's in a very deep pot, and I'm wondering, does it have too much soil? It's not happy at all.
Oh, it's not happy at all? Maybe it's just too much water.
It's turning yellow, and I give it no water at all.
Oh. Check the bottom of it. Check the drainage. I would definitely check the drainage on it. Yeah, definitely check the drainage and see what's going on with the drain hole on the bottom. Because sometimes it's roots that are plugging it up. So regardless of if you're not watering it, that water might still be really saturated and kind of gloppy at the very bottom of your of the container. So it always never hurts to check. You had a question.
Yeah, just if you're using something small like a shoe, are you using it to propagate and then you'll eventually transfer it, or you pick a variety that's just not going to get very big and it can stay in there forever?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, anything that you're going to plant. So the question is the shoe going to be the plant's forever home? Not necessarily. Sometimes it might be, it might outgrow it. So yeah, you may have to transplant it. Or depending on the type of succulent that you use, it might be its forever home. So yeah, there's always the opportunity. Usually that's the thing, like if you're going to be giving succulents as gifts, always let the person know that this is only temporary. Yeah, eventually, depending on what you're trying to give them, I say give everybody century plants and just laugh at them later. When you put this in the ground, when you put this in the ground, it's going to get much bigger, or it may eventually need to be transplanted and put it in a bigger pot. So yeah, so it really all depends. Yes.
Would you make like a wreath?
Oh, a succulent wreath? Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing. They really don't require a lot of stuff. So usually if you're going to make a succulent wreath, usually it's something like a moss or something like that, something that you could occasionally need to spritz in order to kind of create a little bit of moisture. And then mostly it's just about, taking cuttings and just boop, 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 and just, popping it in there. And just allow for it to kind of fill in a little bit. Yeah, you can do that with bowls and buckets and all kinds of really great stuff. It's fun. I mean, so much fun. I mean, am I right? Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's talk about mulching, usually around. Now, succulents, you want them to stay plump and juicy. However, water is a succulent killer. Hold on a second. Hold it for the train. Oh, that was a short one. Right on. So we always want to make sure that we have enough moisture, but not too much moisture. So a lot of people like to use like decomposed granite. That's basically the kind of stuff that we're kind of walking on right now. Small fines, especially if you're doing what's known as xeriscaping. Usually it's decomposed granite and like a ton of succulents and cacti. Pebbles and small rocks, of course. Green moss, tumbled glass. Oh, I need to press enter right there. Green moss and tumbled glass. And then if you do use coarse mulch, so if you're incorporating it, I usually like to incorporate succulents in along with drought-tolerant gardens. So a lot of our California natives or drought-tolerant Mediterraneans or things from our Mediterranean climate. That's always fun, but I'm always going to make sure that I don't want that mulch to get too close, because mulch has great water holding capabilities, but you don't want that necessarily to backfire. And in instances if I'm planting a garden and I'm planting natives that are going to be irrigated, I'm going to put the succulents in close proximity, but I'm not going to give them their own emitter. They're just going to be able to take any kind of overflow that the natives are going to offer when they get water. You had a question?
Yes. So I have some natives in my front garden with portacala along the
Mhm.
edge, and so the portacala should not have their own water.
I mean, how are they doing though?
Well, they look beautiful, but they were just planted a few months ago.
Okay. So I would definitely check and see, if you're
Use a
planting it.
moisture meter or something.
Yeah, moisture meter and making sure that they're okay. And the nice thing about succulents, it doesn't work there? Just pull it up and then move it. And it doesn't want to relent, then you cut it and then you repropagate. So yeah, so they really don't require too much water. Any other questions? Yeah, make sure to provide that ample space around the root ball for sure. All right, here comes the fun part. All right. Succulents are super easy to propagate. Again, it just grew in a bucket and just put out roots and put out flowers. So they are always pretty much good to go. So fleshy ones, excuse me. Wait, I can't get too close. I don't want that noise to come back. So good fleshy one. I'm gonna take a little chunk off of here. Am I gonna do it? Oh, I am. You're going to want to make sure that I always like to make sure it scabs over. Some people like to just do it fresh. But, I like to wait a few days for it to kind of scab over. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just plop it in some dirt and be done with it. And then just wait for it to, that's a great one. Oh my goodness, look at that. Again, it just did it all kind of on its own, which is wonderful. Some things create babies or pups kind of along the base of them. Those are also really fun to grab. You're just literally going to just grab from the base and just kind of twist it and pop it off, making sure that you always want to make sure there's a little bit of a nub, a little bit of a stem, something that's going to make it easier to transplant when you go ahead and put that right back into the soil. Again, I'm going to let that scab over, and then I'm going to go ahead and plant it. So things like chicks and hens, I got some pictures. The pretty pictures are coming up. And definitely like agave, or aloe as well. Yes?
I had a agave hybrid catch-a-wave, and it had beautiful curly leaves, and it cost a little bit of money. It was quite expensive. But in the second year, it bloomed. And when they do that, are they done?
Sometimes, yes. Depending on the succulent, sometimes when it does bloom, that usually signals the end of that plant. However, it's a bit of a long process. You know what I mean? If it's still kind of receiving ancillary water, it's going to stretch that out a little bit more if it happens to occur prior to the winter. But eventually, that plant will eventually die. Yeah, but not all of them do that. Just the rare few, which is always sad.
Just expensive ones.
Yeah, exactly. Just the super pricey ones, of course. Sometimes it does send outside shoots. Yeah, or sometimes it makes pups. Kind of before the death knell happens. Absolutely. I saw another hand. Yes.
So right now, I just do my succulent just sitting up long, flowering. I have a lot of them that are doing that.
That's awesome.
So does that mean that they're coming to the end of their life, or because they still look healthy?
They should be. I mean, usually the ones that I've seen that usually die are the very large ones. Usually, I think because like century plants, sometimes they kind of they knock off because they send like a 25-foot shoot up in the air that looks like the world's biggest piece of asparagus that you've ever seen, stalk of asparagus, and then it flowers, and then I guess that was all the energy that it had. And then it just knocks out. Usually the smaller ones, they generally flower. You cut the flower back, and they keep on growing. So if they're kind of smallish in the small area, like anything that's definitely smaller than this table would definitely qualify. Half the size of this table probably will qualify.
Would it help to feed it once the stalk is bloomed?
Well, I would check and see how it does. Again, it's not immediate. It's not an immediate thing. So usually, like I said, I usually don't fertilize too much with that, but they should be fine. But just kind of keep an eye on them, see how they're doing. But you don't want to fertilize anything that's stressed out because that doesn't really help at all, unfortunately.
I have a question. You had the little leaf.
Mm-hmm. The little leaf.
No, the other one.
Oh, this one, the one that's already made roots.
Well, okay, tell me how you plant that.
I'm just gonna stick it in the soil.
And is that a plant at the bottom or? Is
Yes. So it looks like this was on the side, which is like this other method here. You know what? That's an excellent segue. Right on.
Okay.
Oh, here's the century plant that I picked the other day. Just my foot for scale. I picked a pup and transplanted it. Now it's gonna wait to go to my mom's house. All right, the leaves of succulents. Some of them also have wiry roots. A lot of succulents have these really kind of woody, wiry roots. Those are also very easy to transplant because all you have to do is they put out these wonderful wiry roots. You just have to bury the roots and then you're good. The leaves of succulents. So this is the hardest method. And I've discovered that if you ignore it, then it happens. If you pay attention and try to make it propagate, it never happens.
Right.
I found this completely by trial and error. So the idea is take the cuttings and you're going to just sit them on top of the soil, right? With the idea that it's going to start to root. And then as you can see, there's a whole new plant coming up out of it. So basically this is like a seed. So over time, this is going to get bigger and then this fleshy part is going to shrink back as it starts to feed this guy. But again, you still want these kind of roots. So I might plant it. I don't want to bury this, so I'm just going to kind of plant it slightly in the soil in order for it to, because I want this plant to be the successor of that. But again, it is the longest propagation technique, but don't act like you're really trying to do it. Just kind of
Benign negligence.
Exactly. Because what happened was I had all these little cuttings and I just threw them in this little bucket that had some soil on it. And then I came back a few weeks later and sure enough, it already started putting out roots. I was like, oh, so if you completely ignore it, then that's how this works out. Got it. So yeah, no intention, zero intention with that, for that technique. Because otherwise it never works out. I can't tell you how many times I have tried and attempted with zero success. All right. Any questions on propagation? Again, it's very, very easy to do. Some people like to propagate their succulents in water sometimes. I think it really all depends on the variety and then how quickly it's going to take to propagate because I don't want it to be in water too long because otherwise this is going to get really kind of mushy and fleshy. Definitely don't want that. Yes?
Have you ever grown dragon fruit? Because it's kind of like.
I have grown dragon fruit with not much success. It's very delicate for a variety of different reasons. It's very fleshy. And then it's not so much it's the connective tissues that are always the problem, where it grows and then makes another kind of stalk on it. That's always where the problems are. I've tried a couple of times with zero success. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what it is. I just overwatered it. Did I underwater it? You know what I mean? I've never.
Build a cage around it.
They do. They do. Mine haven't even got to that point. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the cage phase of the dragon fruit. Unfortunately, I will try again though. Nothing's gonna stop me. Yes.
When you have a prickly plant, with a lot of thorns on it,
Sure.
and it has a lot of little babies on it, how do you propagate that? I think you use tweezers to get them apart.
It all depends on how big they are. Sometimes I'll take like a really all depends on what it is. Sometimes I'll take like a small cardboard box and I'll put that over kind of the main plant so I can have my hand to kind of anchor it. I mean, not too much because sometimes, depending on how prickly it is, sometimes it goes, ask me how I know, it goes through the box sometimes. But if you, but to do that, and then, yeah, sometimes you're going to get brick. Yeah, you're going to get brick, but it's totally worth it. Like picking blackberries, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Totally worth it. Every jar of jam just got a little bit of blood in it. All right. So now this is the part where we start looking at the pretty pictures. This is why I usually, if anybody's ever been here, I usually do flip charts, but this is where the pretty pictures show. So let's talk about agave. This is blue glow. It's huge, of course, as you can see, 1 by 2 by 3. Compact. The idea is when the sun hits it, it makes these edges glow on the edge. Oh, I keep forgetting I have this thing. They're from Mexico originally. Their big thing is that terminal spine. I've gotten hit with a terminal spine on too many occasions, because you just don't think it's right there until it is. The sap can definitely be irritating. That's one thing about succulents too. If you're really kind of sensitive to that, make sure that you do wear gloves. Some of them are a little bit more irritating than the others, but there's always kind of like an irritation factor sometimes, especially if it's like a milky kind of sap. So wear gloves, just be on the safe side. Full sun to partial shade for that. They may not definitely flower for years. This is agave blue flame, very beautiful. Again, these are the ones also produce kind of an asparagus stalk looking stalk, and then a flower. Some more pretty pictures. They come in a variety of different sizes, 6 to 8 feet across. 1 by 1, that's cute, the little dwarf butterfly. The quad color, that one makes clumps of rosette, so you're going to be able to get some really good babies off of that. Good luck trying to get the babies from that. That's like chainmail, not even chainmail, because they can go into 2 chainmail. Yeah, so for that, that's definitely stay away from my window kind of plant. Otherwise, you're going to literally get speared. Rubber agave, very beautiful, 5 to 10 feet, beautiful flowers. That's a nice thing when they do actually flower. A lot of my little ones are flowering right now, and it makes me very happy. They're very Dr. Seussical is the best way I could describe it. The century plants, it's a full-on commitment. I've been told that sometimes when the time to remove it happens, there's the word backhoe that usually has to come into play. Because I took this picture and I was able to see clearly because they had to remove the part of the fence that was there originally, but now the century plant had encroached that, so they had to take that chunk of fence out for that. It takes about 10 years to flower. I have a neighbor who has one, and now that century plant is no longer there because, again, it took a while for it to die, but eventually it did die. So it's kind of one of those things where you kind of you will it to other people, like parrots and stuff like that. Turtles, big tortoises, things that live a long time.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
They feel like the skin of a dolphin.
I've never touched a dolphin.
It feels like that one over there would feel like.
Oh, that's nice. Except for the sharp spines.
Except for the shark.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go from the macro to the micro. Sedums. Yay! Sedums are fun. They're also called stone crop. They're great for containers, rock walls, rock gardens. Full sun to partial shade. Again, it really all depends because sometimes they can be relatively delicate, and sometimes full sun just torches them all the way up and down, unfortunately. The flowers attract bees and butterflies. That's another great benefit. I mean, it does take a minute for us to get flowers sometimes, but when they do, they show up. It's very beautiful. This Cape Blanco sedum. A lot of them are carpets, so sometimes they'll grow out 2 or 3 feet. So they're really great for kind of, like a good little ground cover. There is the red carpet with red flowers. John Creech. Love that. I don't even know who that person is. Oh, I wonder if they're going to change his name, though. They're changing all the names of and plants and birds. They're getting rid of a lot of, problematic names. In birds and plants. So I wonder, I have to Google John Creech and see if he still measures up. So yeah, so pink flowers, beautiful carpets. Like I said, there's pork and beans that you've seen. Now I see this plant. Now what does everybody else see when you see that?
Olives.
Oh, that's right on. I didn't think about that. I think about, ooh, cut. 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 And then I can still leave the base of the plant. Now, this is too close. Now, when I'm talking about the soil, and this was planted in the rocks, this is also an example. It's a little too close because as the sun is in full sun, as the sun bakes up, what's going to happen to our lovely little sedums that are touching it? They're going to get a little crispy. So you definitely want a little bit of space, especially if you are incorporating things like rock, for sure. Any questions about sedums? You can probably propagate those little nuggets too. Just pop those things off. Always try to get as clean as a cut as you possibly can whenever you're trying to kind of remove that stuff. Oh, you know what? I'm a blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. I'll make sure I'm good for time. Any questions so far? All right, right on. Those are, I'm not even going to butcher it. They're beautiful. These are probably the most of the, especially these ones, the Ariwrights. Also from Mexico. Very Succulent, with different forms. I love those. There's chicks and hens. That's fun. I actually took a couple of little after I took this picture. How could I not? Blue sky, always beautiful colors. The nice thing also thinks about succulents is because they do come in a variety of different colors, especially if you're trying to incorporate them along with California natives or other drought tolerant plants, because the greens are not just regular old Kelly green. They're like a dusky hue or silvery green or kind of a blue green. So it really kind of mixes up your color palette in your garden as well, especially if you're trying to incorporate with other kind of similar plants, similar water needs plants. Like I'm not planting these next to my tomatoes. The elegans, the little furry Doris Taylor. Yeah. So cute. And the slides that I have are just barely literally just not even 1/10% of all the succulents that are beautiful that are out there. Yes?
Well, this is sort of a warning from the Native Plant Society not to keep Echeverias from the wild because there's plant thieves are even coming over from China.
Oh, yeah.
That's killing our natives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just try not to do that anyway. Yeah. Or just, you know what I mean? Plants are beautiful. Take pictures, leave only footprints, especially if you're going out into the wild. Yeah, I heard that. I've seen pictures of just hillside, just decimated. I discovered that when I went on a girls' trip to Costa Rica. We're walking through the jungle, and basically I'm at a houseplant store. Well, wait a minute. I know that. I know that plant. I know that plant. I'm like, oh, God, I know that plant. Yeah, it was kind of humbling a little bit. All right. Deadliest.
Underwater.
I know, they look like they're underwater. These guys they're nice, but again, what is the kind of thing that you kind of see with that? They're very fleshy, so they're going to be a little bit more susceptible for things like frost. Now, we don't get that many frost here in the Bay Area, but if we do, and you're growing them in containers, try to bring them either indoors or at least closer to your house, because your house always ends up releasing heat at the end of the day. So that's gonna kind of help protect that. So those are kind of fleshy ones. Again, that little dusky kind of gray green color. What happened to the formatting on this one? My bad. I do know how to type. I really do. I know, right? Let me get back on here and start making edits. Sempervirens, they are from the mountains of Europe, very high. Again, they're like rosettes, tightly packed, and then they come in a variety. There's also a variety that I don't have a picture of that has the spider webby stuff all over them. Oh, that one is so awesome. So awesome. Again, I want so many plants. So many plants. This is jade rose. Again, you just keep seeing it. And you never not see it now. When you go out into the world, you're like, oh, that's a succulent. I'm like, I could just, take that. Aeoniums. They're from the Canary Islands. They're also known as the desert pinwheel, or what they call it, the tree anemone. They do have a single rosette. Who was I having a conversation about aeoniums before we started? Who was it? Is she still here? Or maybe she's just not saying. That's okay.
That was on the end of the table.
Yes. Yes.
I had some in my yard. My neighbor was admiring them, so I cut it back. Mine were just like color with the light.
Mm-hmm.
Red tips. She planted hers. Hers are all black.
Ooh.
So
That's cool.
from the same plant. So what would? Because I want some black ones like we.
Okay, so sometimes what happens, and this is not necessarily mutually exclusive to succulents, depending on the sunshade requirements. So I suspect that was yours in full sun, or
Kind of like in the shaded area.
in the shaded area. Sometimes, depending on how much light there is, sometimes that does change the way the plant responds to the light. So I find it weird that it would go for something like that to like I think it's the aeonium, that the Schwarzkopf. It's like that purpley black kind of color. Is beautiful. I think it might have been a light choice. That would be the only thing that I could explain. A light choice either in your yard or a light choice in her yard. But did yours come back in green or did they come back in black?
Mine has a little bit more black on it. Like I said, I didn't. I just cut some cuttings off of mine.
Right.
Hers. It took a while for hers to
turn black.
Yeah, but
I wonder if it's because they're short. How tall are your aeoniums? Were they really tall? Like leggy? Were they kind of leggy? I'm wondering if that has something to do with it.
Hers are tall and they're all in pots. Mine are not in pots.
That is a chin sketcher. I'll think about that one for a second. Seems like there's a lot of different factors at play for sure. But generally, a lot of people, one of the major complaints about aeoniums is the fact that you plant them side by side, like they're, like regular plants, and then they get really leggy, and then there's this huge gap of space between that and the rosette, and sometimes it just gets a little, kind of all over. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'll show you. Kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? That's the aeonium Schwarzkopf with that makes a beautiful flower. So sometimes you're like, I don't want this anymore. So sometimes you got to start from scratch. So it's just a question of cutting off all the rosettes, giving yourself a fair amount of stem in placement, and then just replanting them. And then sometimes what I also like to do is, usually anything that has a rosette, I prefer to plant it on an angle so I can see the rosette as I'm walking by, regardless of when it flowers or anything like that, because to me that's the prettiest part. So if you kind of group them together, I'm gonna do a couple things. You kind of group them together, kind of on an angle. They kind of stretch out and they grow along the ground, but they don't get as leggy. Sometimes they will have a tendency to go and then kind of loop up depending on the light. But sometimes you plant them at an angle and kind of allow them to kind of grow along the ground. They will be leggy, but you won't tell because it's going to be hidden behind all the beautiful rosettes. So that's kind of a tip. Or, you know what I mean? Or cut and start over. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's also an option as well. Oops. Good Lord. I know, right? The flowers are gorgeous. That's the aeonium Schwarzkopf with the beautiful flowers.
So the flowers, when they flower, are those like seeds, and they can be used.
Sometimes they do. A lot of them, propagate mostly by regroupings. Sometimes you can harvest seeds out of them, but it all depends. Usually by this time it gets kind of to the bee phase. But I would definitely try. I've never tried that before. I don't think I need that many succulents. I mean, do I really? But yeah, it's definitely worth a try for sure. I've never tried it before. This picture, I didn't incorporate the thing. I had my one of those gigantic water bottles next to it for scale because that's how big it was.
Dinner plate.
Yeah, total dinner plate. It's gorgeous. And again, the rosette was kind of peeking out. I don't know if that was just because it fell on its own weight, over on its own weight or not. So, aloes, South Africa. Birds like it. full to partial shade, full sun, partial shade. I find that these actually do have a tendency to need a lot more water than most of the succulents that I have. So I'm growing a few of them. They do require a fair amount of water. I'm not too crazy about that, so I had to pull a lot of them into the shade specifically for that reason alone. The red flowers, the red orange flower, usually the flower looks like this.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. The candelabra aloe. Aloe nobilis. I know, right? But then again, worth it. Totally worth it. Wash your hands. It's all going to be good. A little blood. Worth it for some plants. The hedgehog aloe. All right. Now, I present to you the most hated succulent in all of the world. Jade plant. Whoever said it was lucky, I think it is a scam because jade plant is not lucky. It is not a lucky plant. If you're going to grow anything in a pot, this is the thing you're going to grow in a pot. Otherwise, it will take over. I've had to take jade plants out of the ground that basically look like a gigantic elephant's foot.
Yep.
The base is huge. You got to saw it, and then you got to dig it out. So yeah, just put it in great for containers. Generally not frost tolerant, so it's a diva on top of everything else. It is pretty when it flowers. I guess I have to give it that. And, you know, it still is our friend succulent, so that's always good. This one's called Gollum Jade. I'm not really sure why it's called that, but it is beautiful. This is the one that I think I have to transplant because it's still kind of wrinkly. It's not, every time I water it, it still hasn't slumped out yet. So I'm probably going to break it down and start over. Paddle plant is next from Madagascar. It's beautiful. It can get pretty big. They say it's a great indoor plant, not for my cats. I've had to hang everything up for cats. All right. That's interesting. A quick word on design. I know, right? Just a hanging end. Just hanging out there. Again, I like to plant anything that has a rosette because, again, as I'm walking by it, I always like to see the pretty rosette on the side. So I always like to plant them kind of on an angle as well. If you're planting them outside, plant for a variety of levels and colors. You know, shorties in the front, tall ones in the back. Mix up the color schemes, of course. And then if you can, plant them on mounds to kind of increase their drainage. So whether you just kind of scooping up some soil in your yard, making maybe like a berm, a little mini berm or something to plant it because they don't really like a lot of water. So you're definitely try to avoid that. Plant in odd numbers. Someone, designer, told me always plant in odd numbers. So 23, 25. And then just some examples of some gardens that I've been into with just a variety, a whole different mixture, all kind of mixed up. This is an aeonium. Eventually, someone planted this in the wall. Eventually, this is going to definitely have to be transplanted because it's going to be probably take the whole wall down with it once it gets a little bit bigger. I'm like, wait a minute, because I ID'd that. I'm like, oh, that's not going to last that very long. This is a garden I did a long time ago. It's a mixture of California natives and some drought-tolerant plants. I always like to point out bulbini. Bulbini or bulbine. I don't know. Does anybody? Yeah, again, Latin is not my thing. So technically it's a succulent. It's beautiful. It's a little aggressive when it comes to succulents because a lot of succulents are usually a little bit more slow growing. Bulbini is not one of those. Bulbini is the hummingbird sage or the California fuchsia of succulents where it goes from 0 to hero very, 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 very quickly. So as you can see, we've mixed a lot of the succulents in with some of the California natives, and I planted it on a gigantic mound. The mound was huge. Like I had to take a wheelbarrow up to get to the top. All right. If you're doing things in containers, friend Shauna, she is a huge thing. Her things are thrillers, spillers, and fillers. So you put your diva up in the front, the most beautiful one that they've got there. That's going to be your thriller. Then anything that's maybe going to fill in the ground, like a nice little sedum or something, it might kind of hang over a little bit. That's going to be your filler. And then something that's going to want to spill over at the top of it to fill up the empty space. That's going to be your spiller. So especially if you're doing much bigger projects in containers mostly. All right. Succulents make great gifts. Like I said, as we're kind of moving our way forward into the holiday season, which will be here before you know it, because that's how it works. It's a great way to make little thoughtful gifts. If you're going to someone's house, it doesn't matter. Halloween party, Christmas party, Hanukkah party, anything that you happen to be celebrating between now and the end of the year. But just remind them that the succulents are small, but eventually they will get bigger. So there may come a time when that person will definitely have to transplant them into something. And again, the use is the creative use is endless. Go to thrift stores. Here's that picture that I have that has a little donkey tail on it. Drill holes in the bottom of containers for drainage. You can go on Pinterest. I mean, I don't necessarily recommend it because you can just find yourself just going into a gigantic, exactly, succulent DIY, Next thing you know, I'm putting, things in Altoid tins and all kinds of fun stuff. If you don't, because sometimes things don't want to relent to drilling. So say if you're doing something like an older piece of crockery that you're afraid is going to crack. I heard if you kind of put it in water while you're drilling it, that definitely helps. But if you're kind of more afraid of that, definitely kind of fill the bottom a little bit with some rocks, especially if it's something old and you're like, oh, this is my family heirloom, I'm going to turn it crack. And then you're like, oh, great. So much for that. So,
You can still use it though. You just glue the crack.
That's true. And then leave the bottom. That is true. Yep. That is true. Yeah, just glue it. Hope for the train. Wait, was that even a train? So yeah, maybe rocks, so at least the plants are not sitting on water, and then just kind of be mindful of it. And let the people know to be mindful of it. Is your container boring? You can decoupage it. You could do, you could paint it, of course, stencil it. You could do a variety of different things. If it's going to be outdoors, you can always put like a water sealer on the outside so it stays beautiful and fresh for that. Go to thrift stores. And then, of course, don't be afraid to go big. Just let them know that it's going to get big. You know what I mean? Like I said, don't give away century plants, not telling people that it's going to get 6 feet tall and probably as wide. Unless they're not your friends, then do that as well. Exactly. Give them all the century plants. Give them century plants. Tell them they need to convert to Bermuda grass. All kinds of stuff. I'm helping you. And the possibilities are endless when it comes to that. The last shot is the shot of my garden. A little gnome in the back. Are there any questions? Yes.
I've used that when I have a time making a hole in the pot. I made sure I used it for cutting glass.
Oh, a bit for cutting glass? Okay.
For making a hole in glass.
Oh, to make it, okay. Like
Sometimes it's really hard to get through that pot.
Yeah, I bet. I have yet to try it. I'm about to. I have a couple of Pyrex bowls that I love Pyrex, but yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've been kind of wary. I've been kind of afraid. So I've been putting off the project a little bit because I'm afraid to crack them. I mean, they're not totally dear, but they're still Pyrex. I mean, I just can't use them.
Do it at an angle with water. I always put it, those kneeling pads that are squishy.
Oh yeah.
So you put your bowl
hole on top of that, so there's a little give.
Ah.
Then you use water and then you get a diamond edge.
Oh, a
drill bit
diamond
on
tip.
Amazon. They're not that expensive, but you start at an angle, so you create a rough area for the drill bit to grip.
Oh.
And you slowly.
Oh, and then you tip the
drill,
forward, and then
you
it
go
goes down. Okay, did everybody hear that?
It can take like 5
You got to go at an angle first to kind of create a spot, a thinner spot, and then you kind of go up and then go straight down into it. Okay, I like that. Diamond tip, a diamond tip drill
If
bit.
you just go down, your drill will just be like.
It'll be kind of hammering at it, but going it at an angle. Okay.
The drill bits are kind of like this. They're not like a finger. They're round, and the rough area is around the edges, so it's hollow.
Oh, okay.
And so it'll make a hole for you.
Okay, right on. Thank you. That's a pro tip. Thank you. Yeah. Run the hose on it. Uh-huh. And what does the water do? Right on. Is that for friction, I'm assuming? The heat of the friction or something like that? Okay. I've never done anything with,
It gets super hot.
Oh.
If you touch it, you literally blister.
Oh, I don't want that. Okay, well, that's a good. I would totally be like, yeah, touching it. Does anybody have any questions for me? Did everyone get the handout too? If you haven't had a chance to get the handouts, please do so. I'll be here just kind of tidying up. So if anybody else has any questions, enjoy your day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for Annie's for having